Welcome back on The Pursuit of Wealth, everybody. It's Rod with Pow Group, and joining me today is Benjamin Z, CEO of Decibel Cannabis Company. Welcome to the show, Ben. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, Rod, for having me on.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the conversation today. And before we get started, maybe just break the ice with a little bit of your background, how you got involved into the cannabis space as well.
Yeah, so this is my second stint with the company. I rejoined in April. I was with the company since essentially creation of Decibel. So I was the CEO of WeGrow. Back then, our brand was Quest, and we had done a business combination with Westleaf at the time. And through that merger, we became Decibel. And so I was the CEO back then. 2.5 years, I took a break due to some family personal issues, and recently rejoined. And in those, call it 2 to 3 years that I took off, the company's done amazing things. And we've extended beyond just participating in flower, but also in infused pre-rolls, vapes, what we deem ready to consume.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that. And yeah, I'm actually just in Edmonton. So you're headquartered in Calgary. I'm just a few hours away. I kind of just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole cannabis community in Alberta. Like, I think it's second to none. I absolutely love I love Edmonton. I love Alberta, but I love even more the cannabis community here. It's, like I said, it's an amazing experience so far. I just moved here a few years ago. And, I don't know if you noticed, we had that the first ever retailer Plant Life sold products at the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival here in Edmonton. So that was pretty cool to see.
I wouldn't be a true Calgarian without making fun of you for saying you love Edmonton.
Don't you mean Edmonton?
But that rivalry between Calgary and Edmonton is what keeps us going. Certainly last year, the playoffs, hockey, and so it's great. And cannabis is thriving. I think we sometimes get glossed over, given that a lot of the action is based out east in Toronto, and BC's historically has that provenance for a good quality bud. One of our cultivation facilities is in Creston, and so we pay homage to that. But certainly, I think we're doing a lot of good things here in Alberta, specific to cannabis, but just in general.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love pretty much every store I go to here in Edmonton. They always recommend, the Quest. They always recommend General Admission. I've tried a couple of the vapes, and they're phenomenal. So you have great products. Maybe segue into Decibel. Could you give us just a high-level overview of the company? I know a lot of my audience might not be familiar with the company. If you could just touch on, the story of Decibel, please.
Yeah. So quick snapshot of assets. We've got a cultivation facility in Creston, cultivation facility in Battleford. We've recently acquired a cultivation facility that specifically has EU GMP accreditation in Chatham, Ontario. Here in Calgary, we have a manufacturing facility, and so that's where we do all our vapes, our pre-rolls. And so right now, we're integrating AgMedica facility. Prior to that, about a month ago, prior to that acquisition, we were really strong in domestic rec products. And so we're number one in infused pre-rolls, and number 3 in vapes. And we just recently stood up our Quest flower brand domestically, and that's been very well received. And we've participated to some degree, I would say, internationally. But now with the acquisition of one of the largest exporters and EU GMP indoor facilities, we expect to participate materially internationally. The market abroad is growing, and I've heard anecdotally Germany is going to triple its size this upcoming year, and if we feel that by acquiring AgMedica, it positions us to compete and participate in those markets.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I've heard a few people in the industry say that the place to be in the next few years is going to be Germany. With what you said earlier, you mentioned the different categories. So the main ones are flower, pre-rolls, vapes and concentrates, right?
Yeah, so we're like we manufacture in-house or produce. This is an anecdotal number, but like 95% of consumption out there. So we don't
Okay.
do our own beverages,
Okay.
and we have a small participation in edibles, right? But our bread and butter is infused pre-rolls, vapes, and as we stand up flower, that's becoming a new category for us. Well, I shouldn't say new. We're relaunching and participating participating aggressively in that market for
Gotcha.
premium flower or core
Okay,
plus, I would say.
yeah, I'll keep an eye out. I'm excited to try a few of the new SKUs. And then you mentioned you don't do your own beverages, so you're in the beverage category. You have a
No,
partnership.
we don't have
Oh, you don't.
we don't have a presence in beverages.
Okay. Any interest in that segment at all in the future?
No, I don't. We don't have plans ourselves. I think we want to make sure we focus on what we're good at.
Right.
And with the recent acquisition of AgMedica, standing up that facility is priority number one.
Mm-hmm.
Integrating and standing it up, right? And so we see a lot of value there.
Totally. No, that makes sense. And something that I've been saying for a long time is you're starting to see that differentiation in the Canadian market, right? Which is great to see, because in the early days, it was always everybody wanted to be everything to everybody. And now we're finally, you get those companies, those great operators that are focusing on a couple key categories, or a couple, whether it be retail or, licensed producer. You mentioned international markets. So with the expertise and success that Decibel has had in Canada through different various brands, call it Quest Flower, General Admission, and then combined with the opportunity, like you said, with international AgMedica, to export these products and through different certifications, whether it be GACP or EU GMP. Do you believe that Decibel has built a foundation? Do you think that you're going to have an opportunity to sell these same products at higher prices into these larger markets?
That's a great question. I think that, and I even spoke to it, the acquisition of AgMedica forms a cornerstone of our international strategy. We currently have Quest Flower abroad, and we have GA vapes abroad. And I think whether it commands a price premium is our ability to continue building on that brand. But furthermore, whether it does command a price premium, I think where we're attracted to is, number one, extending our brand beyond Canadian borders.
Right.
More importantly, though, we don't have the excise burden. And so there's more fulsome margin capture with products going abroad.
Right. And that'd be like wholesale, right? You're not paying the excise tax on that.
Correct.
Yeah. And what about medical? In terms
So
of
are you specifically referring to medical here in Canada or medical abroad?
Yeah, here in Canada. Do you play in that arena at all?
Not currently. I mean, we have a small assortment of products that are on some of our partner medical channels.
Right.
It's an interesting point you bring up, because with the acquisition of AgMedica, they do have a medical platform. Mm-hmm. And it's only been a month post-acquisition, so I don't have all the details and the decisions, but I do think there is the opportunity for us to stand up medical and participate there. But,
okay.
I think, just as we were talking about staying in our lane and doing what we do best, we've been very strong with our rec products. And so, that still remains a core focus of ours.
For sure. Appreciate the color on that. And you just completed your recent report. That was for the third quarter 2024. There were some great numbers in there. Net revenue is 24.1 million in the third quarter of 2024, an increase of 9% sequentially from Q2 of this year, and a year-over-year decrease of 12%. Can you just touch on, I know Israel, there's been a whole lot of changes there. Lots of companies are backing out of Israel. Maybe could you just touch on the reasons for the decrease?
Yeah, I think, the reason that Israel was a component. I mean, we had a counterparty that essentially went under and left us with a nice little bill that didn't get paid, right? But generally, we came out of the gate very innovative and captured an outsized percentage of market share with infused pre-rolls. And I think competition caught up, but we also needed to understand where we were participating in. And so was it realistic to sustain the growth of last year? I don't think so. Have we learned from that and focused our offerings such that we are leveraging the goodwill that was created from general admission and subsequent products? I think we're doing a really good job with that. So understanding, case in point, it feels like for those of us that are involved in cannabis, feels like a lifetime. But legalization happened in 2018. Vapes, call it a year after. This stuff, the call it the microeconomies within cannabis are still only 3-4 years, and the market's still figuring itself out, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we are ensuring that we took what we learned. We're going to build on that. I think the brand is important.
Yep.
I don't think anybody in Canadian cannabis has done a good job building a brand thus far. Partially that's regulatory related, but we've done a great job convincing ourselves collectively as an industry that THC is important. The price point is important. THC for the price point is important.
Yeah.
And I think there will be a shift from that approach in the market. And that's something that we need to be we at Decibel are laser focused in delivering on what our brand value proposition is.
Right. And then in terms of product innovation, are you looking to innovate any of your vapes at all? Like, do you have any of the all-in-one vape SKUs? Is that something you offer at the moment, or are you looking at adding that to your repertoire?
Well, yeah, we came out with the all-in-ones. And very quickly, I believe we're at 12% of the market for all-in-ones. There's larger formats.
Right.
This is just my take. I don't think that there's going to be any large industry innovation that's going to result in, call it the hockey stick growth that we may have experienced last year. I think that what we've done, domestic Canada is always going to be our bread and butter, and that's going to be a strong focus of ours. So it's not that we're shifting away, but we acknowledge, and you can see it even in our investor deck, that the Canadian domestic market is going to grow steadily, right? Single-digit percentages, and we want to grow with it. But international is where we do see the exponential growth, and so that's the bet with the acquisition of AgMedica.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a lot of competition, and you still can't even, like, a lot of people don't realize too, in the early days, you were in, I think, for the first year it was just flower, right? And then it was the 2.0 products. So it's been over 6 years, but it's really only been 5 years for the vapes, and there was all kinds of issues with that. And then there's you can't even advertise, you can't speak directly to consumers. Like, there's so much things you can't do that the other CPG industries kind of take for granted, I guess. Would you agree with that? For
sure. And like I said, partially it's regulatory. But again,
I mean, it makes sense. But I think even Justin Trudeau said, I think it was like in 2023, he said it's time for the federal government to catch up and support the industry. And there was that what was $31 million in Ontario to crack down on illicit shops and things like that. So that's great to see. But what about excise taxes? Okay, about a third of your revenue went to excise taxes, so about 12.78 million for the third quarter of this year. Have you been talking to any of the authorities, or have you heard anything through the grapevine essentially that we could see some improvement to that, or do you think that that's like the biggest challenge right now for your company and the sector?
I wish I had an inside track. I mean, we all saw the report saying the recommendation was to adjust for it.
Mhm.
These the basis for which excise is calculated was formed back at 2018 legalization when price per gram was $10 and what have you. So you guys all know the drill. I think.
Right. Yeah,
I
it's a flat
believe
fee
that,
versus a percentage fee, right?
yeah.
Mm.
Look, and maybe this is not popular opinion, but I don't necessarily think cutting back on excise. There will be a short temporary blip, but eventually it's going to pass through the consumers.
Right.
And so, um, as that happens, the best thing that comes out of that is that we start taking a piece out of the illicit market because now we're
Right.
more price competitive and the
Mhm.
options are there. I mean,
Yep.
as much as I think we could have done a lot of things better, we still have done a good job. It's just we're businessmen, and so
Right.
we want these things to happen yesterday, right?
Yep.
But over time, there is a black market, but it's significantly smaller than 6 years ago. And the
For
price
sure.
of cannabis, like you go in, even you pay your taxes and everything, it's starting to get comparable for the quality as well,
Oh,
right?
for sure.
And
Night and
so,
day. Yeah.
exactly. So I think it took some time. We got there. Um, but I also believe that I won't say the last 6 years, call it the last 5 years, arguably one of the most toughest environments for an operator, both from regulatory standpoint. Also, it's a nascent industry, so we're all
Yep.
sorting this out, including the government. So,
Mm.
when you get through things like, oh, is this permissible, and how do you get this packaging through? Like everybody's learning, and then you've got an industry that starved of capital, right? And so again, I'm digressing a little bit, but like to your point, whether excise comes and saves the company, I don't think that's necessarily what we're banking on. It's the operators that have managed to weather the storm and continue to deliver profits, such as what we've been able to do consistently. That to me, like you said, rising tide raises all boats. Like when the tailwinds come, we're going to be there to benefit.
Absolutely. Well, just going over the rest of the financials, just a quick highlight: 5.1 million for adjusted EBITDA. You had positive free cash flow of 1.8 million. Definitely seems like things are on the right path. Adjusted net income was positive 2.1 million and EPS positive 0.01. You also had gross margins before fair value adjustments was 53% in the quarter, so very, very high margins. Kudos to the team on that front, and that was compared to 44% in the third quarter of 2023. Can you talk about what was the biggest driver behind that operational efficiency?
Well, you get it bang on. It's efficiency, right? And so we've had to continuously optimize and cut costs and do things better just to make sure we are competitive in the space. And so one of our themes internally is continuous improvement. So
Right.
we're always challenging and we always look to do things better. And I think what we're starting to see some of those results, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then cash at the end of the quarter, just over 3 million. Are you worried about the cash at all? Your financial position, I know there's still a going concern that was mentioned as well in the management discussion and analysis. So MD&A, it did say that you're kind of turning the corner on that. Are you close to removing the going concern? What are your thoughts on that? Again, just your overall financial position.
Yeah, I think we've had I guess it'd be a conservative auditor in KPMG. They've since left the space altogether, so that kind of highlights their approach to cannabis. And we've since switched to M&P. I would just say that from a going concern standpoint, we've been generating free cash flow and we've been profitable. I think to me, that's one of the definitions of being a going concern, right? I think relative to our peers, we've got peers that have boatloads of cash but aren't turning a profit, losing money. They don't have a going concern, no. But are they a going concern? I'm not so sure, right? we've
Right.
been consistently delivering not only profit like EBITDA, but we've also been generating free cash flow.
Right.
And so, do I wish it was gone? Perhaps. Am I concerned? No. We're not one of those companies that raised a ton of dough and are out there diluting every time we lose money, right? So
Yeah.
we're out there just trying to carve our path, generate free cash flow so we can stand on our own 2 feet. And that's the key. I
Gotcha.
will note that with the acquisition, though, we did raise some capital.
Yeah, through
Mostly
the private
integration.
placement, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. It was 58 million shares, I think, and 6 cents a share, which was, great to see because I think share price was just at 3 cents there not too long ago, right? 3.5 cents, yeah, at the end of August.
Yeah. Well, we dipped low, but
I mean, you're an MJ stock, right? So
yeah, it's volatile.
yeah,
Look, I think what I'm most proud of on that private placement was the insider participation and management participation. So we turned that around relatively quickly. I also think that how we did it is unique to the space, at least. Well, any private placement or financing is fairly unique these days. Not a ton of capital going back into cannabis, but cannabis is used to issuing equity with warrants and dilutives and sweeteners and all sorts of fancy stuff. We did the fully clean, non-brokered, no commission paid, right? It was
love
just
it. Yeah.
our team, and we did it on the back of releasing the acquisition. Like
Yeah.
once that was out to market, we set the price. And so I think we're trying to take steps to behave like a proper company in a proper industry. I know there's an overhang from 2017, 2018 cannabis days, but we're trying to reset that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, just PTSD, I guess, from all the dilution, and you look what's happening with some of the other mergers and acquisitions. People were promised a bunch of money and then they're getting zero. It's just been brutal. But with regards to that with that second tranche, you said it was mostly for the integration of AgMedica, right?
Correct. Working capital integration for AgMedica, correct.
Okay. And is there any kind of cost savings that you're seeing there with that integration, or is there any notable challenges, I guess, that come to mind?
No, I don't. I think, well,
It's a two-part question, but
yeah, look, I think we haven't even got to optimization. So we're pretty good, or we feel pretty good at cultivating high quality indoor flower. And so AgMedica is a 4-tier grow. Aside from all the administrative and the processes and what have you, like optimization of their grow is something I'm pretty excited about. Not to mention there's additional grow space, which currently, if the demand is there, we can turn on additional grow rooms. And so I think volume with added volume, you get cost savings, and your fixed cost absorption is spread out over more product, more sales, right? So certainly that's there. I want to just highlight AgMedica is on a standalone is a very high quality asset, but it got lumped into the Atlas Global banner, and I don't think AgMedica on a standalone could withstand the burden of the corporate umbrella. And so that's why. But we thought we picked up a fantastic deal with a steal of a deal for a tremendous asset. Fourth largest exporter of flower, and it's indoor high quality, so it's not like they're greenhouse whatnot. Well, I think it's one of the biggest indoor EU GMP facilities in Canada. So lots of good stuff there.
Cool. And they have 7 countries, right?
Currently, they're in 7 countries, yes. And we expect to add a few more. So.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll be staying tuned into that. And then in terms of, your own backyard here in Canada, you operate in Alberta, Ontario, BC, Manitoba, and New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Like where we have products, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you, like, I know Quebec's a different beast. I know you don't currently operate in Quebec. Is that something that you're eyeing in the future?
So we have products in Quebec through a distributor, right?
Okay. Like a
So
license deal, or?
yeah, like it's a little complicated to go into Quebec directly, and so
Okay.
we
Yeah.
do have some presence there.
Right.
Um,
Okay, cool.
I think
We could
like
get him.
our participation with respect to getting our brand and products, we're pretty happy with our current partners. So no immediate plans to upset that relationship.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And then in terms of market share, do you know off the top of your head what you'd have here in Canada in terms of rec sales? Like in terms of like overall
Percentage
revenue?
wise,
Yeah.
yeah,
Percentage.
we're about 5%.
Okay.
I think it's important to note that our 5%, we're of all the top guys, we're one of the only ones that don't have a value brand that commands
Yeah. I noticed that.
that
Yeah.
high of a market share, right?
Hmm.
And so,
No, that's interesting.
market share as an aggregate obviously tracks total retail sales, right?
Yeah.
And so discount and value plays obviously move a lot. We're very proud of being able to achieve that while playing in our core plus segment. And
Right.
so we track internally. Sure, market share, aggregate market share is absolutely important, not dismissing it, but I think it's more important for us to be strong in the categories that we participate in. So
Sure.
number one, infused pre-rolls, and number three in vapes. So
Yeah, now that you mention it, I didn't notice as I was, kind of going through the company, but now that you mention it, yeah, that's something I didn't clue in before. But again, it's kind of, I think that's kind of helping with the illicit market in a way too. But at the same time, yeah, the consumer wants high quality, high THC, right, and low prices, and it's hard to it's kind of hard to achieve all of those at once. So it's a fantastic achievement that you've been able to do all of that, like you say, without tapping into a value brand.
yeah, and I think again, I'm just going to speak to the market is still learning. We're all learning, and we were we were complicit in training the market into THC versus price point, because it was always we've got 20% THC. Oh, we've got 21. We've got 22, and it's less brand focused. It's about who's got the highest THC. Then it became price point, right? Yep. We're dropping our price. We're dropping our points, but we're upping our THC. In early days, alcohol was like that too, and now, when was the last time you went in and bought a bottle of scotch because of proof, right, or a bottle of wine? And so, I think for us, I remember when, everybody goes and sparks up a joint and we're about to watch Borat. Like that experience is why people, at least for me personally, we smoke up, right? Yep. It's for that experience and those memories and the laughter that comes from it. I don't remember a single instance where how much THC is in this joint, right? Yeah. And so I think that's that reckoning where, I want to tap into that memory of that experience. We want to own that cannabis experience.
Yeah.
What compelled you? Maybe I'm being presumptuous, but I don't think you're going out there trying to buy the highest THC vape and saying, hey, I'm going to smoke this tonight because that's what I want. It's more like, oh, I want to relax, or we're going to go to a game, or, go for a hike, campfire. Camping was a big memory for me, right?
Yeah, totally.
Never was I like, oh, we've got to get the highest THC for the price point, right? Well, back then I was younger.
Yeah.
Price point might have mattered, right?
We're just lucky. Yeah, we're just lucky to find the stuff.
Yeah. So, but no, joking aside, I truly mean it. We want to get back to the roots of why we love the plant. It's because of the experiences that come out of consuming it, right? And for me, a lot of it was social. Sometimes now it's relaxation, but like solitary. But that to me is more important than where we created this kind of arms race of THC and price point.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of spoiled as consumers here in Canada, especially when you look to the U.S. I think the average cost per ounce is around $300 US, which is right now at the exchange rate, that's like $350 Canadian, which is absurd. Like what would be not like just an overall average, what would be like your cost per ounce for your flower?
Oh, you're testing me. I was, the reason why you're testing me is because I immediately wanted to tell you about last time I was in over the summer. We were in Boston. My son was doing a summer program down there, and so I went in, and it was like the same price as us, but 40% more because of the exchange, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, retail price point. We don't. It's hard because we haven't had 28 gram ounce bags for quite some time, and that's by intention because we haven't been able to keep our domestic flower allocation in stock.
Right.
But
capacity.
The reason for that is because we recently repriced it at the Core Plus price point, whereas call it a year ago or 10 months ago, it was at the premium segment. Mm-hmm. And we felt that, we wanted to make sure we were delivering quality similar to what I was speaking to, like that experience around the plant was more important, right? We don't want to be that elitist and craft. And so same quality flower, we just made a slight post-processing adjustment to it so that it's processed slightly different than what it was before, but otherwise same quality flower.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, well, I think the average now is somewhere around 120, for like AAA. If you want quad A, you're looking at probably like $150, $170 Canadian. So that's better, almost closer to $100 US. So I know we're gonna have a lot of people from the US tuning in. And I had a couple of questions from people in the U.S. as well. So I just want to kind of, put that into perspective. It's pretty ridiculous. I don't think that's sustainable in the U.S. But it's I think just the whole idea of it still being illegal too, right? It's easier to charge a higher price point as well.
Yeah, I mean it depends where you're at, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think like
you just got to make U.S. dollars, then it becomes sustainable. Whereas it's impossible.
Pay me in US, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of the US, are you like, is there any, I know you're still busy, with Canada, you're still busy with AgMedica and focusing on, there are already, you mentioned a couple other countries as well. What are the odds that the US would be on that radar? Are you looking at opportunities, any kind of partnerships there? Maybe if you could touch on the US opportunity.
Yeah, we can't move product back and forth across the border.
Right.
And certainly with Trump's election victory, it took the wind out of the sails of some of the U.S. MSOs. And as a result, the entire industry kind of lost some of that political catalyst. Right. But I view that as a good thing for, call it, the next 3 to 5 years for us. And I think that validates why we acquired AgMedica, because as much as I'm trying to convince you that we are building a new brand and it's a focus of ours, it absolutely is. What I also acknowledge is the Americans have done a pretty good job of building brands specific in cannabis, right? And so when these brands cross up to Canada, I won't name any names, but when they come over, there's already brand equity, which is crazy to me because it's such a regulated and restricted market, but that's just goes to show how much media and marketing channels cross borders. Yeah. So what I'm betting on is as we stand up and get access to Quest and General Mission globally, we can provide the conduit for, call it the second tier set of brands from the US through us, right? Because all the big guys, the multi-billion MSOs, they're able to acquire the licensed facility in Portugal and Malta and whatnot, and get their own access to those markets. But there's a lot of really strong second-tier brands that I'm thinking would love access to global markets and don't necessarily have the resources to go out and pick up a EU GMP facility in Portugal.
Yeah.
And so working with us, right, we can now extend product. And remember earlier in our conversation, we manufacture 95% of the products available out there. So whether it's flour, whether it's pre-rolls, whether it's vapes, we do all that in-house.
In-house, yeah.
So
That's
bring
awesome.
your brand over and let's find a deal. And we're happy to extend it, not just to the Canadian market, but the Canadian market is smaller than California, right? So, I mean, that's probably not as appealing, but what we can do is extend it to the global markets. And that to me, I think is infinitely much more appealing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And Germany, like I say, a place to be more than likely over the next 3 years. There was some concern though, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt with regards to the government kind of collapse, I guess, for lack of a better word. Are you concerned about that at all? Like there was talks about them, delaying Pillar 2, maybe even walking, regulations back. What are your thoughts on that with regards to what's shaken out here with the German government?
Yeah, I think, look, the government, I've learned in my career to not bet on or bank on what the government says they're going to do. And certainly, even if they do say what they're going to do, it can flip on a dime, right? I think, I know this is about Germany, but Thailand is a great example of legal one day, not legal, illegal, overthrow prime minister. I can't even keep track, right? It's like a reality show. But I think if we were to take ourselves out of specific markets, global sentiment is such that cannabis is here to stay. And so whether Germany delays or pushes back, it's a timing issue.
Yeah. And
if not Germany, then you go to UK. Like it's just the sentiment is such that this industry isn't going away. And we're just going to find that. And so I think when you look at Germany's growth, we bank on that as opportunistic and timeliness, but certainly are not reliant on that level of contribution beyond the next 2-3 years, because I think we've seen that, right? Every market that legalizes, there's a green rush to come in, and then it normalizes. Right. And so we've got to build a business around the normalization assumptions and be opportunistic about that upfront wave and be in the right position to capture it.
For sure.
Right. Prior to the acquisition of AgMedica, we weren't in that position. We were relying on others. Now we can control our own destiny because we have our own EU GMP facility, right? And so we can start directing traffic and moving into these markets much more efficiently than other people.
Right. Yeah. That is a very good point. And then you touched on the U.S. So I know like you can't cross the border. What about like that whole hemp to HD9? Is that something that you could potentially explore? I know we're going through the rescheduling process. I'm fairly confident. Not sure what your thoughts on that are, but I'm fairly confident that's going to get done. And like you said, it's a timing issue. It's a matter of when, not if. But we're seeing a lot of emergence of the hemp-derived products. Have you given that any thought at all?
So specific Canada, no, because we can get the real thing. So there's no need, right?
No. But in the U.S.,
and then if you're asking me,
it's regulated the same here, I think.
Yeah.
In Canada, yeah.
But
in the U.S., yeah.
Hemp had its day 4 or 5 years ago, and it dissipated, and now it's got a resurgence. I mean, my theory is because marijuana is likely not going to be legalizing federally anyway for quite some time. So now the next best thing is the hemp derivatives, which, I mean, from my own personal perspective, is not nearly as potent or strong or the same effect, but it does the job, right? And so
Right.
half the states still haven't legalized cannabis in some shape or form, and so there's a market there. Decibel is not going to go into the American markets and start manufacturing hemp derivative products. I think that would take us away from core strategy, right?
Yeah.
It's not to say it's a partnership with the right people. We can't look into that, but we wouldn't organically stake a claim in hemp derivative market in the States.
Fair enough. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of, I've never tried the products. I'd like to, because I don't know. I've heard mixed things, right? It's like, oh, it's the same as regular cannabis, and then there's some people who say it's not the same at all. So I'm curious just to try some. I don't
a lot
think there's
lighter.
any place.
It's a lot lighter. Yeah, that's at least again.
It's like
but
mellow.
it's
You're more mellow than.
Yeah, like it's not as strong. But I guess
attacks.
The other thing you've got to be mindful of though is it's also like it's overnight regulation or lack of regulation. And so there's a proliferation of like who knows where the quality of this product is. So in my limited experience, it's a lot lighter, but
yeah. Okay, cool.
You be mindful of your own choices.
Yeah. And you see now they have like all the pesticide reports and like different metals, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. A little bit of a wild west out there.
100%.
In terms of consolidation in the Canadian market, I mean, obviously, we're fairly saturated. We're still extremely competitive. Thousands of licensed producers. If you look at any other industry, that would prove not sustainable long term. Do you still think there's a lot of consolidation needed in the space, whether it be from a licensed producer perspective or a retail perspective?
Well, I think the retail guys are doing a great job. Right. You've got kind of a big three model going with the retailers, and I don't see them not like stopping their growth of their network. I think there's more value to them with additional stores and creating that network effect. I think consolidation in our space as producers, as LPs, is likely going to happen. We've got a lot of operators all competing for the same pie, and I'm not sure we need all of them, right? And there's also a lot of pubcos, and 4 or 5 years ago it would have made a ton of sense to pay all the fees associated with being a pubco. Now, not so much, right?
Yeah.
I mean, every CEO is going to tell you we're undervalued, and I'm no different. But I truly believe that. I think we've been 17 straight adjusted EBITDA positive quarters.
Yep.
We're actually generating free cash flow, and we're trading at like 2.5 times, right?
Yep.
When we've got peers who are not able to deliver profit, but maybe they've got cash on balance sheet, trading at much higher multiples. And so how do you reconcile that? And at what point does someone realize that we're tremendously undervalued, picks us up for cheap or what have you, or investors come in and realize that, hey, these guys are for real.
Undervalued. And
so we firmly believe it here. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We closed our first tranche within 2 days of all insiders.
Yeah.
And so, the space has been starved for capital, but we've proved that wrong. And I think that's the whole point of us talking, really. I believe we're undervalued, and hopefully throughout this interview that some of your viewers can see the same.
For sure. And in terms of, more over on consolidation, like have you considered, I know you're still integrating AgMedica like we talked about, have you considered buying another Canadian producer or partnering, or has your phone been ringing from other producers about potentially merging, like any kind of M&A?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't like. I think our phones are always ringing, but maybe ringing for the wrong reasons. You know, just like that comment I made, we think we're undervalued, and so going to do a deal with somebody who also thinks they're undervalued
Yep.
is not easy. That's why I think AgMedica was such a tremendous deal for us. It's when we're trading at sub 3x and you're trying to find an accretive deal, there's not a lot of options out there, right?
Yep.
And so finding AgMedica was huge. The hope is that we can deliver some performance out of that and convince investors that we're worth looking at again. But I'd be equally both ways, right? It's hard for us to find a deal as an acquirer, given where we're trading at. And as an operator, or let's call it as a shareholder, I'd be remiss to take a deal even at a premium.
A premium, right?
Like, you know, we should be worth so much more. So
even with like
but
even with like a 20 or 30% premium, you're still it's still super undervalued.
Yeah, like 7.5, 8 cents. I mean, we were at that about a week ago. So I was like, do we do that deal? I don't know. Well, I do know personally, but I have a duty, right?
Yeah, well, if your exit plan is to be a buyout target, and but like you said, if you believe you're undervalued, it's slim pickings. Do you want to do the deal just for the sake of doing a deal, and then the people who have the cash don't want to part with it, and the people who are getting acquired think they're worth way more. It's just a vicious circle, I think. But no, that was fantastic. I appreciate all of the insight. I learned a lot today. I think that's pretty much all I had. I think I know the answer to my next question. There was a question from the community about uplisting to, say, from the Toronto Stock Venture Exchange to the TSX or a major US exchange. Obviously there's fees associated with being listed on these major exchanges. So is that sort of the idea there? You're just kind of waiting and try not to incur any additional fees, or like, do you have that on your roadmap at all?
Yeah. And whoever asked that question, assuming they're an investor, they can help lean in on that. I think, I haven't checked today, but we're around 30 some odd million market cap. We have no business being on an American exchange. We wouldn't even qualify, even for the TSX. We wouldn't. So tell your investors I'm happy to do so. Let's get us there.
We need some help.
No. And then, like, joking aside, look, I think it's in everybody's roadmap. And, one of the things that we were introduced by a mutual, and I think one of the things I realized was we came out of the gate thinking that we've got to generate cash, be profitable, because then we own our own destiny. But equally as important is we've got to make sure we're telling that story. And perhaps we might have lost sight of that a little bit. And so that will form a part of our strategy on to go forward, not just in execution and operations, but ensuring that we're telling the story and people are supportive of what we're doing, right? So you'll hopefully get to see a lot more of me out there.
For sure. We'll definitely have you back on again in the future, and thank you for sharing your story and Decibel's story. Any outlook for the cannabis industry into 2025? Any gut feelings, bold predictions?
I am the eternal optimist with respect to the industry. I do think that tailwinds are coming, irrespective of federal legalization in the States. And look, a bunch of my colleagues are down at MJ Biz. I think, like, markets are starting to pay attention, right? And so, we've got to make sure there's perhaps too much negative stigma from the early days of cannabis that's still leaving an overhang. But I remind anybody who listens that this industry isn't going away, and it's going to be around. And if it's going to be around, you're going to need operators. And so right now it feels like everybody's undervalued because, frankly, a good portion of us are. But by the time we're valued where we're at, you've missed a boat.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned you're a crypto guy. People are talking about Bitcoin now. I mean, they had entry points before, but the same excuse. Oh, it's not real. I don't believe in it, blah, blah, blah. But by the time
Yeah.
it does, it's hard to get back in, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with your conviction level, and conviction comes through putting in the work, right? And understanding where we are, where we're going, what sort of opportunity we have, the growth trajectory. And the only, Warren Buffett could come to you. I say this all the time. Warren Buffett could come to you, and you don't know he's Warren Buffett, and he could give you the best piece of advice, but you buy this stock, can you weather the storm? Can you handle a 20-30% pullback? Are you going to have the conviction to hold it through the peaks and valleys, right? And are you going to sell it too early? Like, there's so many things that go into it. So knowing the value of what you hold, and knowing the industry, and you mentioned crypto. That's not my passion. It's not my love. My love is solely dedicated to the cannabis plant. It's been always my biggest passion. And in 2018, I couldn't wait to figure out a way to get involved in the cannabis space. And this is something I do. I love doing it. I'll be doing it for the rest of my life, as long as I'm on the earth, really. So it's been a brutal couple of years, 4 years, 8 years, whatever you want to call it. But I agree. I share the same optimism, the eternal optimism leading into the future. But that's all the questions I had today. I really do appreciate all of your time today. Is there any closing remarks you'd like to leave shareholders with, or any future shareholders?
Yeah, no, well, first off, I thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I think you've given me a great discussion, probably more time than you normally take. So I do appreciate your time. We just love to do what we're doing, and we want to set a culture of transparency, and hopefully through this interview I'm able to share that. I acknowledge Decibel might not be everybody's investment or fit their investment thesis, but we believe here at the company what we're doing. I believe. And I think we've got, especially now with the post-acquisition of AgMedica, we've charted like a path for growth, for future growth that's easily to understand, right? It's not dependent on Canadian regulatory hurdles or what have you. International markets growing, we're going to be right there in the thick of it. And we've got a lot of promise, right?
Well, exciting times. Once again, I'll be following the story, and we'll have to have you back on again in the future when we have some additional updates.
Perfect. Yeah, anytime. Thanks so much.
My pleasure, Ben. Thanks so much for your time today, and I hope you have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right. Take care.